I had lots of celebrations in Europe and in Britain. I just had some in Manchester. Before that, I was in Glasgow for an opera and lots of concerts of my work. And I remember being in Salzburg and Florence at the beginning of the year. So I've been 75 quite a few times already. I think it's wonderful to conduct your own work, but I never had a conducting lesson in my life. So every time I do it, I'm terribly nervous and I do my best. So hold your hats, you never know, but I really do my best. And I think working with orchestras over the last 20 years as composer in residence for the Scottish Chamber Orchestra, the Royal Philharmonic in London, and the BBC Philharmonic in Manchester, I have learned a little bit about conducting, and I had to learn how to conduct Beethoven and do concertos and do Mozart and Stravinsky and Schoenberg. Very, very good for a composer. I had no tuition as a conductor at all. I started as a composer. I wanted to compose. I knew that's what I wanted to do from about the age of 4. At 4 years old, I was taken to see one of those very English Gilbert and Sullivan operettas. And this was the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me. And I thought, I want to make something like that. So I knew I just had to become a composer. This concert, I think, will be the last that I ever conduct, because I've decided the rest of my life, and I hope it's going to be a long one, but at the age of 75, you have to make decisions. And there's so much music I really must write, which is in my head there. I can see a line right through from my earliest works, through 8 songs, through those very expressionistic works I was doing in the 1960s, through to the pieces which are more contemplative, which become more politically engaged, more to do with nature, of course, when I moved to Orkney in 1970. I think the concert on Friday, it's got the Orkney Wedding, which is a Scottish piece. It's got Last Door of Light, which is based on a George Mackay Brown poem, Orcadian, very Scottish poet. And I think the whole thing is to do with my experience of living in Scotland, particularly in Orkney. And I think the whole concert, for me, is permeated with a sense of the sea. The sea runs through, if you like, the veins of all the music. Jimmick the Postie was our postman on the island of Hoy. And he's still there. He's still a wonderful character. And he goes around the island delivering the post, and the piece is a tribute to him, and it was commissioned by the post office. So that was a very fitting piece, I thought, to write for the post office. And of course, on the island of Hoy in Orkney, again, the sound of the sea, it's always there, it's always present, and you never forget it. These 10 concertos I wrote as composer in residence for the Scottish Chamber Orchestra were all written for the orchestral players in the orchestra, and we did them. I did a Mozart concerto with them and then wrote the concerto. I got to know them very well, so they were tailored to that orchestra. It's a concerto where I've used the clarinet and quite a small chamber orchestra to really express a concentrated love of the islands, if you like. And it ends with, it isn't a folk tune, there was a composer of this Gaelic tune, and at the end of it, it ends very, very quietly. It floats at the end, and it becomes very translucent. So in that respect, it's virtuoso, and it has these huge clarinet climaxes, but then the end, it's very, very peaceful, and it fades away into what I think of as light over sea. Last Door of Light, it's a piece which faces up to ultimate reality. I suppose that I know that one day that sea is going to come over and cover the island of Sanday in Orkney, where I live now, and that my house, which is right on the shore, will be one of the very first to go. I hope it doesn't happen in my lifetime. And the last door of light in George Mackay Brown's poem, that's the last light you see as you drown. And so it's a piece which is very, very concerned, ecologically, if you like, about climate change, and I suppose about the necessity to adapt, but to try to do something about it. And the whole work is full of the stress and strain of this. Again, it's a sea piece, but a very violent sea piece for most part. The Orkney wedding was inspired by a wedding on Hoy, where I was living, which actually happened. My friend the farmer, against all expectations, he was over 50, he suddenly got married. And this was a wonderful occasion because I think it was the first wedding there in that very remote part where the population had largely left for about 28 years. And of course there was soon another big celebration because they had a daughter. So that was the first child, I think, born for 28 or 29 years in the valley. Very, very important occasion. So this piece is a memory of that wedding. And all the music is like Scottish Orcadian folk music, but the tunes are mine. And at the end of the piece, I remember from the celebration, I walked home across the island. And as I walked south, and up in the east came the sun. And to represent that, I used the Scottish bagpipes. And at the end of the piece, in blazing glory, up comes the sun in the shape of the bagpipes, and the piece ends with a very positive note for the future of the islands.